Hello everyone, welcome back to Vivid with the Edu. So today we will be discussing Ganesh and Devy's literary history and translation and Indian view. So let's dive right into it. Ganesh Narayan Das Devi, born on August 1st, 1950, is a renowned Indian cultural activist, literary critic, and former professor of English. He is best known for his work with marginalized communities and his efforts to preserve linguistic diversity in India. Some of his literary achievements and contributions are People's Linguistic Survey of India. Devi initiated the largest ever survey of languages in India, involving nearly 3,000 volunteers and resulting in publication of 50 multilingual volumes. This monumental project aimed to document and preserve the languages of India, many of which are endangered. Adivasi Academy. In 1996, Devi founded the Adivasi Academy at Tejgarh, Gujarat to promote the education and cultural preservation of Adivasi tribal communities. The academy focuses on documentation and study of tribal languages and literature. He also established center in Baroda to support research and publication in Indian languages called Bhasha Research and Publication Center. He was also a part and launched the Dakshinayan movement in 2016. Devi has authored and edited close to 90 influential books in areas such as literary criticism, anthropology, education, linguistics, and philosophy. His first full length book in English, After Amnesia, 1992, is considered a classic in literary theory. He has received several prestigious awards, including the Padma Shri 2014, Sahitya Academy Award 1993, SARC Writers Foundation Award 2001, Prince Claus Award 2003, and Linguistics Prize 2011. Before dedicating himself to cultural activism, Devi was a professor of English at Maharaj Sayaji Rao University of Baroda 1980 to 1996. He has also held fellowships at Leeds University, Yale University, and other prestigious institutions. Ganesh Devi's work has had a profound impact on the preservation of linguistic and cultural diversity in India, making him a significant figure in the field of literary criticism and cultural activism. Now, let's see how does Devi differentiate between views on translation in the East and the West. Ganesh Devi presents a compelling comparison between Eastern and Western views on translation, focusing on the differing philosophical, cultural, and historical perspective that shape these views. So, the Western view on translation, we will see first metaphysical and philosophical underpinnings. Devi highlights that in Western metaphysics, translation is often seen as a form of exile or a fall from the original, akin to the Christian myth of the fall. This perspective implies a loss of authenticity and originality, viewing translations as inherently inferior to the original works. The strong emphasis on individualism in Western philosophy leads to perception of translation as an intrusion by the other. This intrusion is tolerated to the extent that it helps define one's identity but is not fully embraced. what is the historical perspective? Western literary criticism often holds translation in lower regard due to the temporal sequence, viewing them as less authentic because they follow the original works. Western culture, particularly monolingual ones, are acutely conscious of the act of translation. The emphasis is often on preserving the purity of the original language and culture. Western structural linguistic, which with its focus on monolingual data, struggles to fully grasp the complexities of translation. The emphasis is on achieving systematic equivalence, which is often deemed impossible, especially in the realm of poetry. Western theories overstate the validity of synonyms and equivalence, often failing to account for the nuanced and dynamic nature of language in translation. Now, let's see the Eastern views on translation. So, the philosophical and cultural underpinnings. In contrast, Devi introduces the concept of a translation consciousness in Indian context. This idea reflects the inherent multilingualism and translational nature of Indian literary culture, where translation is seen as a natural and integral part of literary practice. Drawing from Indian metaphysics, Devi likens translation to the unhindered migration of the soul from one body to another. This perspective views translation as process of transformation and revitalization where the essence or the soul of original work is preserved and reincarnated into a new form. So, what is the historical perspective of Eastern views on translation? Indian literary history is rich with examples of translation shaping and transforming literary traditions. Figures like Jayadeva, Michael Datta, Bankim Chandra Chatterjee laid the foundation of modern Indian literature through acts of translation. In India, multiple languages coexist and interact, creating a continuous spectrum of signs and significances. This environment fosters a natural and fluid approach of translation, unlike the rigid monolingual traditions of West. Devi emphasizes a flexible and context aware approach to translation, recognizing the cultural and historical dimensions that influence language. This perspective values the creative and transformative potential of translation rather than striving for impossible semantic equivalence. Instead of focusing solely on linguistic accuracy, the Indian approach considers the broader cultural and aesthetic implications of translation. This holistic view allows for a more dynamic and adaptive practice of translation. Now, let's do a comparative analysis of Western and Eastern perspective. The Western view tends to be more rigid, with an emphasis on preserving the original authenticity, receiving semantic equivalence. Translations are often seen as secondary and less valuable, constrained by metaphysical notions of loss and exile. Whereas Eastern perspective, in contrast, the Eastern or the Indian view celebrates the creative and transformative potential of translation. It embraces the fluidity and interconnectedness of languages and cultures, viewing translation as a means of revitalizing and reinterpreting literary traditions. By highlighting these distinctions, Devi calls for a re-evaluation of translation theory, advocating for an approach that recognizes and values the creative contribution of translation. The perspective challenges the traditional hierarchies and open up new possibilities for understanding and appreciating the rich tapestry of global literary culture. Let's dive deep into key aspects to understand them better. So, the purpose of the text is first. The text discusses the role and significance of translation in literary history, particularly from an Indian perspective. It aims to challenge Western perspective that view translation as secondary to original work. Instead, emphasizes the intrinsic value and creative potential of the translation. What is the historical context of this text? The theory emerged in the context of post colonial India where multiple languages and literary tradition coexist. The historical backdrop includes the colonial impact on Indian languages and the subsequent efforts to reclaim and redefine Indian literary identity through translation. Some key concepts and terminology used in this text are translating consciousness, semantic differentiation, and structural linguistic are critical. For instance, translating consciousness refers to the awareness and practice of translation as a natural and integral part of Indian literary culture. What is the role of the translator according to this theory? The translator is not just a mediator but a creative agent who plays a crucial role in cultural exchange and literary innovation. The translator's responsibility is to convey essence of original while adapting it into a new linguistic and cultural context. What is the critique and limitations of this text? The theory critiques Western approaches that undervalue translations and fail to recognize the creative potential. However, it acknowledges the challenges in achieving true semantic equivalence and the subjective nature of translation. What are the practical applications of this text theory? In real world scenarios, this theory can guide translators in adopting a more holistic and culturally sensitive approach. It encourages translators to embrace their role as co creators and to consider the broader cultural implications of the work. In conclusion, Ganesh Devi's translation, A Literary History, an Indian View, presents a nuanced and culturally rich perspective on the role of translation in shaping literary history. By challenging the Western notion that translations are secondary to original works, Devi emphasizes the intrinsic value and creating potential of translation. His theory, rooted in post colonial and multilingual context of India, highlights the interconnectedness of languages and literary traditions. Devi works Devi's work underscores the importance of a balanced approach and that respects both the source text's integrity and the target audience cultural context. By advocating for a flexible and context aware approach to translation, Devi positions the translator as a creative agent who plays a crucial role in cultural exchange and literary innovation. His contributions have significant implications for understanding and appreciating the dynamic and transformative nature of translation in the global literary landscape. I hope you guys understood the overview analysis of this text. Do subscribe the channel and I will see you in the next video.